Education to order on Monday, July 13 at 7 o'clock, Bryan Elementary Commons. I'd invite you to please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call roll.
Scott. Here. Ben. Here. Deb.
Here.
Dustin. Here. Mike. Here. Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is approval and signing of the June regular meeting minutes and also the June 18 special board meeting minutes. You should have all received those to review previously. I would accept a motion. Mike?
Second.
Thank you, Ben.
Scott.
Yes.
Ben.
Yes.
Deb.
Yes.
Dustin.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is public participation, and seeing no one here for that, I will move on to communications. First item being Fort County report, and did we receive?
I did not receive a Fort County report this month.
Okay, thank you. The next item would be an esports update from Matt Cullen. Matt, welcome.
Thank you. As promised, we wanted to give you an update on the esports program. Everything had come to the end of the school year. And so I sent a presentation that kind of puts together all the information that we kind of what transpired over the spring season. And we know the spring season was in school anyway, was cut short because of the COVID stuff. So first off, I just put together like numbers. So this is the interest survey results that we had from the very beginning when we went to the board to present about, can we get this club started? And then I tracked numbers to watch attrition through the program. And this is pretty typical what we see in most programs. You start out, I even looked up some articles on club organizations, startup grous, and what they see with their numbers. And you always get that on-fire kid that requires no investment on their part. Yes, I want to do this. And then as you start adding more check boxes that they have to meet, more requirements, more criteria, you see the attrition come out. So by the end, we've gone through like the interseason open labs, which is just them coming in and playing with the applications, getting used to it. Maybe they've never tried one of the available games before. And then to the actual season start, which required parent forms, student forms, signature forms, all that stuff. We had 15 active members. That would fluctuate. Sometimes we had people who were not necessarily part of the team, but wanted to come in and go to open practices. But we had 15 kids that were signed on full participation for our esports club. All right. Some factors that played a role in that, additional steps. The game they didn't intend to play and compete in was actually offered on PC versus them playing it on console at home. Some students didn't think the program would happen. We get a lot of ideas, but sometimes those ideas don't come to fruition, so you find that. And we also had a few individuals, I would say it's very few, but I think they didn't quite understand what we were trying to get after with the esports program. And they were very explicit telling individual athletes to not participate or not be part of this club. And I think what it was is they thought that we were going to take them away from their sport. And that's not what this program is about. This program is about finding those individuals who don't normally find their niche in a sport and try to get them involved with something at the school level, so they can don the Bryan gear and they can get out there and be part of that, of our district in a positive way. We work with any athletic program to make sure that they are meeting the requirements for that season. And ordinarily we tend to focus on those, again, that are not actively involved in an in-season sport to be part of this program. So I think once we got that across, I think everyone we had 100%, support. I expect that as the season moved through into, like, let's say February and March, we started to build our social media presence, and through that, I started receiving emails from students about, how can I join this club? Well, we've already gone through that process, but be looking forward when we come back to school next year. I think because of that, and the addition of, we're going to be getting the ESO, Esports Ohio, which is the league we're part of. It's a nonprofit built by teachers and educators and administrators in the state. We're adding Fortnite, Valorant, and Overwatch to what we can do. I think that's going to draw in more student participation. I think we're going to see, like, I would expect between 25 to 30 individuals to be involved this next coming season, provided we can roll with things. More schools doing ESO all the time, people talking about it, streaming about it, and then also there's a map here showing the growth of the Esports Ohio League. We had 70 schools in 2019, fall of 2019. By the spring of 2020, we have 126 schools on board, so that number I believe is higher now. So I put the map up when I built the presentation. So we have an application process. I'm not going to go through that because you have the shared presentation to you, but there is a process for getting part of the team. Anyone who wants to be part of the club can be part of the club. We do not turn any student away, but what we do have to do is determine varsity and JV players. People who are actually going to be part of and compete, on a weekly basis. So we do have some eligibility requirements as well. We require a 2.0 GPA or better for that quarter. That's a current GPA, so we're checking grades every week. If they fall below that threshold, they're put on suspension, and we work with them to try to get that grade up if we need to do that. They should be on track to graduate, passing all classes, regardless of the GPA. They must be passing all classes. All right, so we have that. For practices in season competitive play, we do ESO requires on-site, in-person practice. It's not something that we can just okay, go play at home and whatever, because they do that already. What we're trying to do is build in that teamwork aspect, build in that citizenship, that camaraderie of being part of a team, and then also analyzing their gameplay and trying to build them into like a better, not just a better person, but also a better gamer all the way around too. So we have that expectation that they compete in their match and they at least show up or are part of a practice session. So they need to dedicate at least 2 days a week minimum to be considered active and part of the team. On top of that, we have several games going throughout each week. So you have your Rocket League people, you have your League of Legends people, and you would have your League of Legends, Rocket League, and Smash Brothers. We have those people rotating in. So they may all show up on Monday and want to play, but Monday through Friday we have people rotating in to get their practice time as well as do their matches. So overall benefits, we saw 2/3 of our people who are active participants do not participate in sports in Bryan whatsoever. Not just spring, but just whatsoever. So that was a win, I think, as far as that goes. And also, we had several universities watch our streams and reach out to our players and offer them to come and scrimmage with their team. In the hopes of if they perform well enough that they might be able to offer them some sort of academic scholarship or some sort of scholarship to be part of their team. And a couple team members are actually, I think, going to try with some scholarship money for playing on their League of Legends or Rocket League teams. So it's here, and it's good that we've been able to provide them that stepping stone to open some doors for them. With any club, with any sport, there's a lot of things that go into behind the scenes as well as in front of the scenes. As far as a coach is concerned, I have to not necessarily be an expert in the game, but have a feeling for what the game's about, the nuances of it and whatnot. So that takes time, tracking stats, reviewing footage, supporting their strengths, developing plans to remedy their weaknesses. So it's just like any other sport. and we talked about it before. Beyond the coaching, making sure that the performances get published appropriately and to the ESO, they get posted, broadcasting and live streaming the gameplay, team communication, setting that up and making sure we have a Discord server and that's set up with the different channels for each team so they can hop in and run chat messages or voice chat, or even they do video chat now on Discord, where when they're online, they can see who on their team is also online and communicate with them directly, even at home. And then also working with IT staff. As far as like to compete, what do we need? We need computers to run them, coaches to supervise, and so forth. What don't we need? We don't need to transport them, right? This is a program that doesn't require any transport unless you were to advance to the finals. That's when you hop on a bus and go to Akron and check out their $1 million facility for esports. And we don't need an upkeep a field or arena. We don't need referees for matches. It's all done by coaching. The coaching staff that's part of the ESO themselves, and the students also work to try to make sure that everyone's playing and playing fairly and being respectful to all players. I just also put together how much time is actually spent on making sure this program works. And this is just like stuff that I had done. This does not include what IT staff has done to help us out, what administration has done to help us out, what members of the community have done to help us out to kind of try to help support this program. But I broke it down, and I can link the spreadsheet. We don't need to go into that, but if you want to check it out, I just broke it down by things that need to happen in order to complete preseason work. Work that needs to happen during the season itself, and then I also broke it down into weekly hours. Weekly hours tend to crop up when you get to preseason and when you get into the main season itself, with practices and whatnot. We're appreciative of this, as far as programming plans and suggestions, there'll be a survey that will go out in August of the school year to ask not just the current players, but also future or prospective players, what can we do better? How can we make this something that you feel that you could be part of and participate? We can use that data to prepare for winter tryouts, which will happen in December, and then we'll roll into spring season in 2021. All right. I wanted to throw this out there because we have been making use of whatever we're able to make use of, and we're really appreciative of all the work and time that had gone in to make this happen. What we're disappointed about is that we were not able to officially, as part of the ESO League, compete through the entire season. We did find, and the ESO did set up what we call quarantourneys, which was a tournament that students could sign up for, and then they would just play from home. Clubs were were told to stop, and sports were told to stop, and so we were not meeting officially. It was just like a player would shoot me a message, say, "Hey, coach, there's a Wisconsin Esports is putting on a tournament. Can we go and play in that?" And I thought, well, it's a positive. One, they're going to be social distancing appropriately. No cost to them, and they have a chance to earn something from it, like scholarship money or just monies in general, or trophies or something. Some T-shirts, I think, in some cases. And it allowed them to still, and they can carry that Bryan, that Bryan flag with them, which is kind of cool. Really, that's all I really wanted to do, was just kind of update you on what the plans were. We plan to be rocking and rolling this upcoming school year. Other questions that you might have with respect to the program.
I'll just jump in and commend Matt for all of his efforts and time invested in getting this program up and running. And like you noted, it was kind of a letdown that we had to suspend all the operations as we hit the COVID protocols in the early spring, but fantastic job of getting the students' interest, getting them involved in something that maybe necessarily they wouldn't have been involved in before. And I love the logo and the branding happening there with all the cool colors and the logos and the graphics coming out. So just a great opportunity for the students, so thank you.
Matt, do you have equal breakdown of males and females in the
I can get that. I can do that, but we do not. It is not 50-50. We did have several female students who expressed an interest in support, but they didn't really want to compete. And I asked them kind of why, and they just, they don't really have a reason. They do game, and they would play at open practice. I'm like, you're great, you should, why not? But they were more interested in the graphic design, the art, the video, the tech side of things, which is fine too. I mean, we'll any way they want to get involved is fine. But that's another thing that I would like to plan to have on the survey is like, how do we break that barrier of, that this is open for everybody to come and play. We see a similar thing with robotics. I think we've slowly seen a more even break when it comes to male-female enrollment in the robotics program, which is great. Hopefully we can get that to work with.
Did you have any of those 15 or so at the end teammates that graduated?
Yeah.
So you lost them?
Yeah, we did lose a few to graduation. I'd say three or so. And two of those are planning to play esports at the college level. So
Great.
Yeah.
Great program.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item would be our treasurer's report.
Thank you. Begin with our cash reconciliation. At farmers and merchants, we have $2,440,617.57. Total adjustments, including deposits and transits and outstanding checks, of $40,543.22. Total investments, $13,832,975.33. Petty cash on hand, $4,500, for a total fund balance of $16,237,549.68. In addition to that, all of the normal financial reports were in your packet for this evening. Were there any questions on those reports? So as we have finished the fiscal year, I thought I would give you a highlight on where we came in compared to our October 2019 forecast for fiscal year 2020. We had forecasted total revenue of $21.1 million in October. Our actual revenue ended up being $20.9 million for the fiscal year. That's a decrease of $250,000. The good news in there was our property tax returns were $125,000 over budget, but we did receive $337,000 less in aid from the state than what we were projecting back in February, which is the main reason for the reduction in revenue. We also received $63,000 more in other financing sources that above budget, so our total revenue and other financing sources for the year was $193,000 less than our October forecast. Total expenditures for the year, we had forecasted $23.2 million expended. We came in at the end of the year at $22.6 million expended. That is a savings of $621,000 less spent than what we had estimated in October. $200,000 of that was in personnel services, almost all of which can be attributed to not employing substitutes for 2.5 months, which is one of the silver linings to this that saved us significantly. Additionally, we decreased purchase services by $194,000 and supplies and materials by $115,000. Again, I attribute most of that to the school not being in formal operation for the months of March, April, and May. So our total for the year, we had originally projected in October to have a deficit to spend of $2 million. We ended up with a deficit spend of $1.66 million. That is a positive variance of $354,000, better off at the end of the fiscal year than what we had forecasted in October. Any questions on that?
there's a positive in losing money, that's
That is one of them. We lost a little less than what we thought. Then I wanted to update you, as we had spoke at the last meeting, our first indication on what the state planned to finance the foundation payments at would really be when we received that first foundation payment, which we did receive on Friday. And the news that came with that is that the state is initially going to fund the schools at the level to which their funding was reduced for fiscal year 2020, which, as you'll recall, the foundation payment was reduced $318,000. So we are at this point being told to expect $7.3 million in state funding through the foundation formula. The state has not, however, guaranteed that funding amount in either direction. So we may see less, we may see more, but at this point, that is what we're receiving. That's good news to us, as we were originally projecting an additional 10% cut. So that could potentially represent as much as $700,000 of funding that we did not forecast in May for fiscal year 21. So that is some good funding news there. Some bad funding news at this point: the Student Success and Wellness Funds, we are being told to expect to receive $100,000 less in fiscal 21 than what we were originally told we would receive this time last year. And then finally, the CARES funding, I have an updated number for you for that. The amount that we are going to receive, exclusive of the money that we have to transfer to our non-public St. Patrick's, is $273,503.71. Those funds are for use to respond to the COVID crisis, but additionally, the federal government and the state of Ohio have said that if you have received a budget reduction because of the COVID crisis, that you can use these funds really in any way to continue operations. And so while we intend to take care of some things like hand sanitizer and things like that out of this, we also will just be using it to help offset the deficit spending that we're going to see this year in the general fund. So that's my financial spotlight. Any questions on any of those issues?
So there was a concern that we received our foundation payment as the cuts were coming in. I do believe, is that correct? We had already had the money.
Right, so
And then the cuts came for other schools. Will we see that retroactive, or?
no, so what they did when they established the cuts in May, there were 3 foundation payments left. My concern initially that I had shared with you was that I thought there was a potential that we might see such a big cut that we would not receive any foundation payments for the rest of fiscal 20. In fact, might end up, our retirement payments are made out of that fund, and I was concerned we might have to make payments to the retirement systems because we didn't get enough funding. That did not happen. The cut that we received was less than what we had left to pay, and so the foundation payments that we received the 2nd May and the 2 June payments were enough that we still received funds, although not much, about $66,000 a payment, but in excess of our retirement payments. So that, my concern of we may not get any money for a month and a half, that did not happen. We did get a little amount. Moving on to my recommendations. First off, we are going to establish the change funds for 2020. This is an annual action to provide the various offices with money to make change when people come in to make payments. We have $2,000 for high school athletics, $200 for junior high athletics, $250 for high school concessions, $200 for the cafeteria, $200 for the elementary office, $50 for the high school office, and $100 for the field house. In addition to that, we are confirming our petty cash funds for 2020-21 school year, $500 for Kevin Schaefer, and $4,000 for high school athletics. The high school athletics, just to let you know, they pay the officials out of that. That's the primary use for that petty cash fund, so that my office doesn't have to write a ton of checks to referees. They take care of that, and then usually 2 to 3 times a month, they'll submit for reimbursement, so that it cuts down the number of checks we're processing in the treasurer's office. Next is the Community Hospital Wellness Center lease agreement. This is the lease agreement for the parking lot at the Portland Street property. This is a lease agreement that we established last year that has an option for 1-year renewal. Upon your agreement, the hospital has indicated that they would like to renew for 1 year, and so we're just going to renew that 1 more year, and then we'll renegotiate that lease next year. And then we would like to thank Barbara Speltzer-Chetwood on behalf of the Art Speltzer Estate for the donation of vintage track and theater items. These are from the 1930s, so some very nice historical items that were donated back to the school for use in display.
I would accept a motion to approve the treasurer's recommendations.
So,
Thank you.
second.
Thank you, Scott.
Ben?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Dustin?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Thank you. The next item is the authorization to refund bonds. As I told you last month, we are looking good to refund the next section of bonds that we issue for a lower interest rate. This will be a non-taxable refund for the people who purchase the bonds. Of course, ours is never taxable to us, but not taxable to them. And so this is the authorizing legislation from you that gives us the authority to proceed. Again, the board is not committed to refunding these bonds until the point of sale. And so we can at any point back out if it is not favorable to taxpayers to continue.
Okay, I would accept a motion to authorize Scott.
Yeah, I'd make a motion to authorize the refunding of funds.
Thank you, Scott.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Dustin. Any other discussion? Feel free to go.
Deb?
Yes.
Dustin?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is for old business.
The board had asked me to bring back to its attention a request that we received for reimbursement of current and former school officials for costs arising from the performance of their school duties today, so that the board could take action on it.
And I would accept a motion to move that forward.
I would make a motion to accept that reimbursement of the current former school official costs for performance of their school duties.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Dustin. I would open that to any discussion or comments at this point.
Yeah, I would just make a comment that this is really just something that's provided to every board that I've ever been on as an insurance policy to protect them from all sorts of things, including lawsuits and other items. I think it's just something that was overlooked in our insurance policy, whether that was done through the insurance company or just from the administration here. It wasn't something that was ever really thought about until it came to be. And now that's been changed, and that insurance is in place for all of us and for all of the board members to follow in our footsteps for years. I think it's just the right thing to do, that we would offer that same insurance to our predecessors before us.
I agree with that. All boards that I've served on have it in place, so it's good to get taken care of.
Okay, very good. Kevin, can you call the roll?
Dustin?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Thank you.
And now, moving into new business. And, big topic on everyone's mind, so.
Yeah,
Mark, we'll turn it over to you for COVID school plans for 2021.
Yeah, thank you, Deb. So we are getting closer and closer to the much anticipated start of the 2020 school year. So Over the summer months, information seems to have changed by the day, if not by the hour at times, in relation to schools and what to expect as we restart, is the term being used, in August. So in the recent weeks, a lot of information has come from the governor's office. We've received a guidance document from the Ohio Department of Education, and it was in conjunction also with the Ohio Department of Health. And then we've also had the opportunity to, after working through those documents, to meet locally here as a county with our Williams County superintendents and our Williams County Health Department. Because our end goal was to have a consistent approach for the return to school, because much of the data received from the state level is based on your county statistics. So in working very closely with the health department, we have been able to develop a primary foundational model that all schools would like to follow and use as that basis for establishing our protocols and processes that we look to as we look to start back with the 2020-2021 school year. So over the course of multiple meetings and multiple discussions, we were able to then release a document that came out this previous Friday. That was July 10th. And that was emailed and conveyed on all media outlets to all stakeholders within the county for their review. So what I'm going to do today is just walk through some of those parameters with you and explain in depth. Remind yourself as you read this that this was a countywide approach to have consistency, but each school district recognizes that we have different facilities, we have different ways that we navigate through our school day, we have different programs that we offer. So what I will do is highlight in each of these sections how some of this is panning out to look more specific to Bryan City Schools, but keep in mind it does take a tremendous amount of planning and efforts and teams that are involved in looking at every minute detail. So we are set to, beyond this document, release more information that specifically pertains to Bryan City Schools so that our parents, our students have those details at their hands. So that will be coming in the coming weeks. We don't have an exact date pegged yet because we have multiple committees with multiple people looking at multiple areas, so we'll get that information to all stakeholders as soon as possible. So with that being said, again, this is a countywide plan or agreement, if you will, and we all have agreed that we are going to implement these policies to the best of our abilities, but we also recognize that no matter what we do, we are a public setting, just like walking into a public restaurant or a public store. There's always some risk involved, no matter what public arena you go into, so we are going to do our best to provide that safest setting possible, but we always understand that that risk is there. So part of coming back is our athletes, our student athletes, started to display these practices and coming back as they look to reopen athletics, but it requires all of our stakeholders, all of our students, and all of our staff to do a daily health assessment. So this is asked to be completed by the family and the students on their own, and the health department and the experts have recognized that if there's a fever or symptoms, fever above 100 degrees Fahrenheit, or if you're displaying any symptoms related to COVID, and I'll get to a decision tree here shortly, that those people are asked to stay home for the safety of all. So part of the return is conducting those daily health assessments. So then it goes further on to say, what happens if a student or staff member is diagnosed with COVID, and also if you are not diagnosed with COVID. So our health department, and I'm going to kind of jump here, Diana, has developed, we call this the decision tree. And it outlines, that's okay if you don't have it, it outlines what to do if you are around people who are displaying symptoms, if you have received a test, whether that's negative or positive, how you proceed, what to do if you are experiencing symptoms within the school setting, and how the exposure and the tracing is going to be diagnosed with the health department. And then if you are, I guess the protocols to follow if you are exposed. So I will go through this word for word, because there are many various symptoms that are situations that can arise. But in a nutshell, what the plan is we have established with all the Williams County schools that we plan to work very closely with the health department if any of these situations arise. So for example, if we have a student or a staff member who unfortunately either experiences a positive test or experiences the symptoms of COVID-19, we will then go directly to work with our processes that we plan to follow, and this will happen countywide. So immediately that student or staff member will be designated to a safe location within the building, specifically within a nurse's clinic, in which they won't have any contact with any other individuals, and the individuals then working with that student or staff member will have all of the PPE equipment necessary to work through with them. We will then contact the health department, and they will assist us in providing the information that we can relay on to all district stakeholders, so parents, students, staff, so everyone has the information. They will then lead, investigation is the wrong word, but they will lead the process on determining who has been exposed and follow the social tracing patterns that need to be followed to ensure that they can then take appropriate steps with any individuals who may have come into close contact with someone diagnosed with or having the symptoms of COVID-19. So we are very fortunate that our health department has formed a very strong relationship with all of us here in Williams County. And we are all very much on the same page that we will work through this together, that because they are the experts in the field, they will lead that process, and they will lead and guide us into how we proceed next. Because every situation is different. Every situation has its own characteristics. So we will look for their guidance, and we will then aid in the communication of all that information to all of our stakeholders. So it will be a very unique situation to work through should that happen, but we feel very confident in our health department and all the processes that they have in place, because they've been living this now for months and have done extensive amounts of research. So we're very confident in what they are going to lead us through. So I'll pause so far for questions because there's a lot.
So just in thinking of us here at Bryan City and many other districts, athletics we've had a number of athletes that have already been back in the building, participating in training, conditioning, and about how many, just a ballpark, how many students or athletes would we be talking about overall there? Jeremy?
Well, with all of our programs combined, we're talking hundreds,
Okay.
over 100, but they are meeting within their teams and
Okay.
within their skills workouts in much smaller settings, much
Okay.
smaller group
So
sections.
controlled size settings just by the nature.
Correct.
And then about how many staff are involved with that?
So with all of our coaches, you're talking dozens of
Okay.
coaches between your assistants and
And
head coaches.
to this point in time, have there been any issues, any concerns, any?
So in related to our school-related athletics
Yes.
and workouts and practices, no.
No.
We have had a phenomenal following of the practices by our student athletes and our coaches.
Okay.
I would go as far as saying that they have set the bar in what they expect. And our school-based practices and programs have done a phenomenal job.
Good.
So it is our hopes that they are setting the example for the rest of the community and the school as we look
Right.
to come back.
So today,
However, we have had, Mark is correct in that the school-based part of the program, but we have had instances where we have been contacted as part of the social tracing
okay,
that has happened because of interactions that our student athletes have had away from campus.
okay,
So we have been contacted that student A may or may not have been exposed and they are now under quarantine conditions.
okay. But that's been able to be responded to.
Correct.
Appropriately.
Immediately and, with no further issues related in our school.
Okay. And just another thing that's crossed my mind, because this is something that I've been thinking about a lot, how we begin to bring students back. Did the health department share anything about daycare settings in our community? Obviously, they've been open for a while now. Have there been any concerns or incidences that would, like, kind of trigger us to think
They did not share that.
they did not? Okay.
None has been available. The closest conversation we had in relation to daycare is we have to look at, there are preschool requirements that have come out in state guidelines that are going to dictate the ratio of teacher to students allowed in a classroom
Okay.
at a 1:8 or 1:9 ratio. And then if it goes beyond that, the classroom does have to be divided appropriately with an appropriate divider that is 6 feet in height and limits the contact between the groups of 8 or 9 students in your preschool class. So we're going to be working through that language and through those protocols to establish exactly what those dividers look like. There's options available out there. They just came out with more guidance late last week. You can have anything from plexiglass in the room that may be mobile to some degree, to possible curtains or clear curtains, such as shower curtains that can be, again, appropriately hung through meeting fire code to split the classroom. So we're going to work with our maintenance crews on exactly the best scenario that will unfold in relation to that. And that would be about the closest we've come in relation to that age level.
And I guess I was just thinking, could we draw anything from the things that they have put in place if there's not been any incidences of concern that, we can say, well, they served a number of students over a period of time and, we want to follow and do similarly. With what you said about the ratios, do we foresee then that we will have a fewer number of students that will be able to come to our preschool? I know typically those classrooms are quite full.
We have to keep working through the guidance documents right now.
Okay.
That was just released on Thursday or Friday.
Okay,
last
I didn't mean to
week.
put you on the spot, I just was,
No, I was just going to say our administrators at that level are closely monitoring
Okay.
the enrollment numbers. Because we could be in a case where if the enrollment's much lower, then we don't need a divider based on that number. So they'll have to monitor that as.
Right. And obviously those students with special needs and IEPs, we have to service those students despite any constraints we have with numbers there. Thank you.
As far as like athletes having to be tested before they go play, like at a different school or something, where is that cost gonna arrive from for the testing of the students?
So I'll take
You
the
wanna
first
jump in?
stab at that
Okay.
one. So as of right now, we have not allowed our student athletes to participate in any activities outside of inter squad. So everything that we have done has been on campus. I think what you're referring to, Mike, is what we're all reading about in like the NBA and the baseball and soccer and everything starting up. And those
Yeah.
certainly are the guidelines that have been put out. Cost, schools like us, we can't abide by those same guidelines. Like we cannot, that cost would fall on us as a district. And we're already looking at, deficit spending in other areas educationally. The other concern I have is just, we keep hearing, and again, you have to be really careful as to fact check and filtering what you're hearing.
Right.
But just the shortage in tests. So again, how we are dedicating the tests, would we even have them locally? We have heard stories of individuals in our community who've had to wait sometimes up to 10 days to even have availability of a test. So while we see those things happening at the pro and maybe collegiate level,
Right.
just keep in mind that as of we stand today, we are not leaving our campus. So we are not requiring that testing as of today. Neither is the state or the county. And if that changes, we'll definitely have to take a look at what that means to us and how do we move forward.
Right. Okay.
And I would add to that, it is our general expectation that the athletic program finance itself. The exception to that is that we pay for transportation, the busing of the teams from the general fund. Beyond that, the athletic department is expected to cover some costs through ticket sales and fundraising. As it sits right now, we projected about 50% revenue for the fall season as just a wild guess, really. And they budgeted for a somewhat reduced expenditure for the year, but there's no budget right now for testing that's in that. At that rate, the athletic department will deficit spend this year. Again, they have their own money that they have built up over the years, and they can continue at the rate that we have right now for 3 years before they would run out of money. So if there did end up being some sort of testing requirement that we had to do that we decided was worth doing, the expectation that I would have, that I would present to the board, is that like all matters athletic, that we would expect the athletic department to finance that itself. If the board felt differently, certainly that's a choice that you could make, but that would be my proposal to you initially.
Okay, thanks. So on the preschool side of things, that's just the only people that have those guidelines at this point, because obviously our other classes are
Correct. Now,
larger than that.
yeah, I'll kind of use that as an opportunity to segue in here. This classroom occupancy is one thing that we're going to touch on here. So I'll skip to that and then I'll come back to the next topic in this document. But in regards to classroom occupancy, we are going to, we have some committees that are forming and establishing to review the building administration, the best formats to utilize to set up our classrooms. So many of our classrooms are different than the other as you walk down the hall. So they're going to start looking at configurations and ways to socially distance our students appropriately. And ultimately, we want to have some ideas and options available because the health department will come in and work with us as we prepare for the school year to give their stamp of approval on those classroom setups. So we will work diligently to ensure that we have that recommended guidance, the American Pediatric Association, along with the state recommendations, they have anywhere from 3 to 6 feet. Obviously, 6 feet is ideal, but that 3 to 6 foot range to keep students distance as they work in classrooms. We will work to have that approved and make sure that those are acceptable for those requirements. One of the other areas of this is a topic that everyone has a thought on, and depending on the minute of the day or the day of the week, you kind of might have a different thought on it yourself. But face coverings right now are established in our countywide plan, but they are strongly recommended and encouraged for all students. So that's on the student side. The health department has established that is one of the #1 barriers to help prevent the spread of COVID or of any virus for that matter. And it's the barrier that can go with you at all times wherever you're at. Because as I noted earlier, we are going to strive to have all practices in place to be as safe as possible, but there's always that risk no matter where you're at in a public setting. So we are strongly encouraging our students to wear masks if they choose to do so. And we look at this as a great opportunity for students and families to have that conversation as a family to decide what is best for them in their current situation. And whether it's you have underlying medical or health issues that you're concerned about, or if you have other rationale as to why you need and should wear the mask, then by all means do so. And on the flip side of that as well, if you're practicing hygiene and safety in other ways without the mask, then that's a choice for those families to make. But our staff will be required to wear masks. That is a state mandate, unless they have a written rationale through the health department as to why they are unable to wear the mask. So that's where we're starting with the face coverings or the face mask topic. However, it is noted further down in our document, if we should see, and let's hope we don't, because we are following a yellow status right now in our countywide level indicator as to where we're at in relation to the number of COVID cases. But if we should see an increase or a spike, that would move us up that color system or the levels. So yellow is take precaution and maintain your safety protocols. Orange is there's definitely an increased risk. And red is there's been an established and confirmed that we have a higher spread happening within the county. And then purple is more on the we have more of a crisis level happening. We hope to never be anything higher than yellow, but we currently stand at a yellow. But should, as a county, we have seen increased number of cases, and we need to take further precautions to help limit the spread. And as a county, we've decided to implement the required face mask for our students as well. So if we remain on yellow, it would remain the option and strongly recommended and encouraged. Or if we hit the orange, then we would go to the face masks. Jumping even further in the document, kind of skipping around here, I know, but if we do hit red on that indicator from the state, then we would look as a county to review going back to remote learning. That's based on the number of cases that we would have in the county and the predicted spread. As schools, we would want to do our part to help limit that as well. And so would businesses at that point. And I think there were 12 counties labeled in red when the data came out last Thursday. They compiled that data on a weekly basis and collect it all on a Wednesday, and then they release it to the public on a Thursday. So we'll see here in another 3 days what the data looks like, both locally and across the state. So we'll have to monitor that. But that's where we stand on face masks right now. And I've had conversations with staff members about face masks. If we're setting the precedent, for social distancing, and we're setting the precedent for just safety as we return to school. Our students are fantastic at following the lead of our adults, of our superiors in the building, so they will obviously have a greater chance of following safety protocols and making sure that they're staying safe themselves, whether that's hand sanitizer or washing your hands or socially distancing, any of the above. They'll catch on very quickly. So we're very confident in that. In all, this comes down to we want to provide an educational option for our families. So we realize that there's some who, maybe because of underlying health conditions, or some who are going through this pandemic and not wanting to subject themselves to public settings. If we do return in that face-to-face manner, then we have the option for students to enroll in a remote or virtual setting. So this is where you start to get into the specifics how each school is a little bit different. Each school in the county has a slightly different platform or way of implementing virtual or online lessons. So we here at Bryan City Schools have our ACE Digital Academy, it's called. And that is a software or a company that we have partnered with for many years now, over a handful of years. And we've always had this option available to our students. Now it's just more prevalent that we have this option. So we are going to be communicating in a very short future here to all of our families exactly what ACE Digital Academy is, how it operates, what the requirements are behind it. In a nutshell, so you're aware, it is an online platform in which you are still considered a Bryan City School student. But when you enroll, you have a plethora of classes to enroll or to choose from. Your guidance counselor will help you select the classes to help you meet your needs to earn your credits or to be in the appropriate classes. But although you're still a Bryan City School student, you then receive your education from the curriculum that is set up by ACE Digital Academy. And the curriculums are state approved, they follow all the state standards. They also have the educators. They also have the supervisors and the teachers for those courses. So students that decide to enroll in ACE Digital Academy will receive their coursework from those curriculums and from those teachers. So we're going to be promoting to those students that it is a very independently structured learning process. If you are a younger student, maybe in elementary grade levels, you'll probably want some adult supervision to help you through the processes, because it does require regimen and structure and scheduling your own day. It's not done for you. You're providing the lessons and the activities, but it's on your own intrinsic motivation to complete those in a timely manner. You also have to meet the regular attendance guidelines with those. You have to be showcasing that you're completing lessons each day, so that you're progressing through your criteria for your class. And it's just it can be very successful for students and families, but one that families need to understand it is not what remote learning was this past spring. It is truly an online curriculum that is very structured and regimented and laid out for you, but it does take the independent motivation to go through that program. So we've seen very positive outcomes from that. We've had a lot of students enroll in classes already in the past and earn credit for courses that maybe they would not have otherwise. We've also unfortunately seen the flip side, because it does require that intrinsic motivation and that regimen in your day, which, because you don't have a teacher with you every day or teachers, it can be easier to fall down. So we want to make sure that that's well known by our families as well. And so each district, again, will offer an online or remote learning option. Jumping to food service, the big takeaway from food service is there will be no self-service. So we're going to have to make adjustments within our cafeterias in which we don't have the salad bar accessible to those students to just take at their free will. It will all have to be served by our staff. We actually really do a really nice job of always plating our food on trays for students already. So some minor changes of the salad bar and some of the items out for freelance purchase, such as maybe granola bars or applesauce that you usually maybe go up and purchase yourself and have to get directly from a food service member. And then we also have some committees looking at the appropriate ways to sit our students within our cafeterias and how to handle those transitions of large numbers of students coming in and large numbers of students exiting between those lunch periods. So as we get the specifics on those, we will release that all to our families so they're aware of that. Jumping to hand sanitizing, we are working with all of our maintenance crews. Ned Roofer is phenomenal, and he's leading the charge on finding the best method to acquire and then place hand sanitizer in all of our classrooms, and then working closely with the transportation department to also have those available for our buses as students enter and exit the buses. So we will have that. We also have a lot of hand washing stations already built into our facilities. So at the elementary here in this building, some are located in the classrooms and right at the fingertips of our students. If you jump to the middle school, high school, there's even stations right in the hallways within the educational suites. So those are all readily available. And then we always had sanitizer in our cafeterias and common spaces, but we'll see increased amounts of that as well. Transportation. We're going to be working with the transportation director, Bryan, very closely here in the coming weeks to establish the transportation protocols. Right now, we are going to be running our buses at near capacity, meaning that we sit 2, if not sometimes 3 individuals, depending on size, per seat. And he's going to be analyzing the routes and all of the processes to follow with students entering and exiting the buses. So that'll be coming here in the coming weeks. And we're going to also implement the use of seating charts, and going back to working with the health department for social tracing if needed. So they will establish that. Again, on the buses, base coverings are strongly recommended and encouraged because you will be in close encounters with other individuals on transportation. And again, if we have to follow any different state mandates or policies with transportation, we'll have to follow those. So, we also have committees looking at the best way to handle the playground and the recess time for our elementary students. If we have items that are frequently touched at a high rate, we might have to either close some of those items down or look for a new method to utilize those. So for hypothetically, if the monkey bars are a hit and every little hand is touching those, we might have to look at how we go about the use of monkey bars. So they'll take a look at that. And then right now, classroom field trips, there's no field trip scheduled until further notice, so that we don't travel our student body into other areas of detention. call more spread. And visitors and volunteers, we've established that unless you are invited by the school into the school for a reason, we are not going to allow visitors or those volunteers in. So, for example, Rotary Readers is a phenomenal program. It takes place here in the elementary. That would be a school invite to those individuals, a minimal amount of individuals. So if that invite is extended to them, that would be approved. But we can't just have a group coming in or parents coming in wishing to integrate in with the students or the staff. So that would be limited. So, as always, everything is subject to change. We monitor the news daily and hourly as we go throughout our days. So we will continue to send updates. But the main thing with all of this and moving forward is we will have specifics related to Bryan schools coming out. We want to get that out as we move through the month of July, because August 1st is going to be here before we know it. And that way we have all of these processes to follow here locally. So stay tuned as a parent, stay tuned as a staff member, stay tuned as a student for those specifics as they relate to Bryan schools.
Mark, once this is out, the specifics are in place, and it's maybe the end of July, to put this out, is there a way that we might be able to survey parents and of students so we would get an idea that they're already decided we're not sending our child, we're going to go online, versus we are sending, just to get some ideas of numbers?
Yeah, so one thing we have in the works right now when we release the information about East Digital Academy is a Google form or a Google type survey in which parents will respond to us if they're wishing to look deeper into this and receive more information and move in this direction.
Okay.
So what that will give us is the feedback as to how many individual students are looking to go in this direction, and then we can take those that do not voice that interest and know that they're planning to come back in that face-to-face manner.
And just out of curiosity, if they chose to go with the ACE Digital Academy, is there a deadline that they have to be signed up for by?
There's not one set at this time, but there will be, and we will establish that. We're working with our guidance counselors because they enroll them in all the courses. So we're looking at that beginning of August timeframe. We would like to collect the data over the next few weeks when this goes out, so that students can start to get enrolled in that as we get to the beginning of August. So that questionnaire will be coming out, I'd say safely by the end of the week or beginning of next week. And that will allow parents 2 or 3 weeks to kind of sort through and decide what direction they see themselves going.
You and I had talked earlier, and I guess now I might need some clarification on this, indicating that the teachers, as they teach daily, all of those lessons will be on the Google platform that is offered.
One area we're looking to.
So my question is, can the students choose to do that and not do the ACE Academy?
So that would be considered like a blended approach, and we are not going to utilize that blended or hybrid model right now.
Okay.
There's a lot of potential complications that can arise with anything from, first of all, making sure like if you're doing a lecture that all those videos and everything that happens in the class is accessible on there at the same time. But what our teachers already do, and what I was alluding to is throughout the spring months and even before that, they have integrated into posting all their assignments and course information on these Google Classroom platforms or similar platforms for students to access. So we will continue to utilize that and most likely encourage that more, so that if, for instance, hypothetically, we hit a cycle in which we are required to close down school and go back to remote learning for all. For our students that are learning face-to-face, they are already used to that method in the classroom, and then they just simply pick that up at home.
Or somebody that was breaks leg or something like that has to go
Correct.
for a few, they can still do this.
Yep. And we'll have cases too where a student may not want to go online, but heaven forbid, they have to quarantine for 10 days. And they're able to keep up with their course with their teachers through the Google Classroom platform.
Okay.
But again, it's a great question because parents really do need to understand when when we talk about that they have the option of choosing remote learning or choosing to be here in person, what each of those models looks like so that they're making the best choice for their child and their family.
Right, and that was the one, when I started thinking about that was the clarification I didn't think about, was could they just choose to do that, and I can understand why you would do that. So it's either in person or it's a cap.
Correct.
Or as a remote option.
And we're making them make this choice on a semester basis. So they're committed, they go to ACE Digital Academy, they're going to be in ACE for the semester.
Okay.
Then, you know, they can reevaluate for second semester, but they're not going to be, well, this week we're on ACE. Well, now we want to come, like, there's jump in points and jump out points, but you've got to commit.
Is there a jump in point if, heaven forbid, something happened and, you know, the parent starts to get a little bit nervous and decides that, you know, it's mid-October and doesn't want to send, can they join
We're
the
good.
ACE Academy?
We're gonna handle those on an individual basis, like meeting with them and seeing exactly what the issue is and how we can be of help.
Okay.
Is the ACE Academy equipped to address those students with special needs? Or
Yes.
IEP?
Yes, they have teachers who are certified in special education and provide those services, yes.
And we've had frequent students that may have been identified with special needs take courses through ACE
Good.
in years past and continue to do so actually as we speak. Some of those.
All right. Should we get to the point where we must close our buildings again, are there some teams or some work groups looking at how we would move to that format, as far as structure and time, and are we looking at those things as well? I know when this in March, it was very, very sudden, not much time to get ready to do remote education. So are we looking for our teachers to have, whether it's some professional development or some things that would, if we need to move that way?
I think that goes back to Scott's question and what Mark alluded to in that since this has happened, our teachers have learned many lessons. And yes, we continue to offer that professional development. We know now we all need to be on the same platform. We know now that the kind of the timing of the lessons and what they need to look like. So if we would have to move in that direction, I do believe our teachers are much better prepared than we were in March.
Be a little more seamless for everyone, for families and teachers.
It's some great survey feedback that came to us throughout the remote learning process in the spring. It
That we could
was
use.
heavily analyzed and utilized for the latter half of that process.
Perfect.
So with ACE, how does the funding work for that? If parents pay for the ACE program, it's a school thing.
Yep.
Only thing that changes if somebody says, I just want to do a homeschool option, they can choose to do that. That would change the funding model, but not if they go to ACE.
Correct. They can still choose to homeschool. Homeschooling is still an option for our families in our community. But in that case, they provide their own curriculum, they provide all of the education, and you're correct, the funding stops.
They're completely on their own.
Correct.
for all that.
But in ACE, it's just like if they were in our building.
I will plug that we are now one-to-one K-12 across the district, so if a family or student decides to go in this direction, they have a device that, through the school, that they will be able to utilize. That will help them along that process.
Which is another thing, back to your question, Deb, it was a great point. That's another thing we learned in March. We had to get one-to-one through K-12. So we made that change as well.
One easy thing that are looked over your shoulder, drinking fountains,
They're all turned off.
all are going to be turned off.
Yeah,
The kids
just
can
the
carry a water
bottle,
bottle or
they can
something.
which we already had our funds ready for all of those. Right.
We were ahead of the game in that one as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So, we'll come in.
Just going back to the cafeteria situation, it said in there, we talked about groups crossing and all that, but it talked about extra sanitation and stuff. Will that be happening as groups leaving, or are there going to be people out wiping tables down and stuff?
Yeah,
Is that required?
So our cafeteria staff does that right now.
Okay.
And then we are going to increase the amount of hand sanitizing stations available, and then always encourage the students to wash their hands before and after they eat. So that would be part of the encouragement of all those students as they go to start putting food in their mouths, touching all their food.
And we also were already using the spray, the janitors were using the spray sanitation. And have we needed to look at upping the amount of those units available for use, or?
Even if we were, those units are not available until mid-October is what we've been told, and the cost of them has quadrupled.
Supply and demand at its best.
And we were very fortunate to have those on site and be able to utilize those.
Are we able to get the fluid or we
Yes.
are able to get the product intake, so.
Correct.
Okay.
I think our schedule allows us some air and leeway in some of the things that we scheduled in early on, so that having the breaks, the long breaks, the way
Yes.
we do, I think that helps in some of this case. But the state gives us some guidelines where we can make our own decisions based on what works for us, because I think maybe traditional schools would have a traditional schedule, 2 days of Thanksgiving, maybe less than Christmas, whatever it may be. We have some flexibility with ours, hopefully, that we can, hopefully we don't have any issues, but kind of a real big difference between this and influenza season, so it's, I don't know how the state disseminates that, that'll be interesting how they determine what those numbers are based on, is it flu season or is it COVID season?
Right. Yes.
Okay, well, in an ideal world, we're going to get started on time. We're going to do everything we need to do to keep our students safe and in school 5 days a week for the entire school year.
Sure, you're fine.
I'm going to hold that hope in front of me. And I know that we're doing many things and thinking of trying to think of all scenarios, or possible scenarios that we need to address. And I just want to say thank you. I know this is for administrators probably not a typical summer, in the sense that there's that time to do a little deep breathing and thinking about some other big picture things. It's been pretty much already laid out for you, what you have to spend time doing. So thanks goes to all the administrators really for all of that extra effort, because it is certainly a different season we're living in right now. Thank you.
So as for the plan, as we look to potentially make a motion on this to approve it, it basically is just the basis and the foundational principles that we're going to follow as a district in conjunction with the 6 other Williams County schools to develop all of our processes and policies. And we formed all of this information together in a united front and are going to stick by that. So if this is approved, it just is saying that this is our foundational basis for which we're going to operate, and everything that we do within our individual districts will follow these parameters and guidelines, because as I noted earlier, we all are just slightly different with how we do some specifics, and what it will allow us to carry out with those foundational approaches in mind.
So what you're asking for us here is to support the motion that we would look and own those as the county, the Princeton schools will get behind that, and then look at those parameters from that, we will look to implement it how we best can here.
Right.
Okay, thank you. I would receive a motion.
So move.
Thank you, Mike.
Second.
Thank you, Bill. Any other discussion? All right, if you would call the roll, please, Scott.
Mike?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Dustin?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is superintendent's recommendations.
Yeah, so I'm gonna handle this section. First of all, we have a resolution to formally recognize the district support organizations of Bryan City Schools. And each year, we annually recognize the Bryan Athletic Boosters, the Bryan Music Boosters, the Bryan Academic Boosters, and the Bryan Elementary PTO. So again, that's an annual action. We work with those groups. This was initially brought about a few years ago by the state auditor. We collect some information from them, and we appreciate their ongoing support of our students in our school district. Second, you have the Northwest Ohio Juvenile Detention Center agreement. If by chance we had students that were housed at the Juvenile Detention Center, they take over the education piece and we transfer in any credits that they may earn. So that again is an annual agreement. It does come at a cost, but it is necessary in the world that we live in. And then finally, under Superintendent Recommendations for the 2020-2021 school year, that you allow the bus stop locations to be established by the Transportation Director. You give the authorization to relocate the school bus stop locations to the Transportation Director, and that payment in lieu of transportation at the rate established by ODE for the 2020-2021 school year in the event that the transportation by school conveyance is impractical. So I just want to, again, a special note, in our plan that Mark alluded to, we all hope to be here, we all hope to be here 5 days a week, we all want to be safe. However, if we get to some issues that result from transportation, the state has allowed that we can make changes as we go through the school year. So again, this will be something that, although you're giving authorization to the Transportation Director, that he's going to review with Mr. Rary and with Mr. Schaefer to make sure that it is what's best for our school district as a whole. So we won't make any drastic changes. Our plan is to stay with the 1 mile radius as of now. But again, it is possible that we could have to look at that as a change as we move forward. The other thing the state was kind enough to remind us of is that as a public school district, we are responsible for transporting our charter non-public schools within our district, so we will continue to engage with St. Patrick's School and provide transportation for their students as well. So, any questions on any of those recommendations?
I would accept a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the superintendent's recommendation for the 3 stated items.
Scott?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Dustin?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, under personnel recommendations, and at the end, I'm gonna let Mark talk a little bit about this, so give you a heads up on our savings and the reasons behind, but we are transferring Lindsay Slagle to middle school intervention specialist. We are transferring an involuntary transfer of Callie Thiel to 5th grade reading intervention specialist and pull-out services, and an involuntary transfer of Abby Hughes to 3rd grade intervention specialist. Do you want to talk about that right now?
Yeah, I'll jump in now. So you see on there the involuntary transfer language. So we ran into a situation where we had a staff member leave the district, and that provided some opportunities for us to shift staff around to base our services on where the need arises. In this case, it was within the field of special education, so numbers and data were analyzed as to how many students need to be services and at what were the appropriate grade levels for those services to occur. So there were multiple transfers of staff across grade levels to help, in the end, through attrition, not fill a position where there was not a strong need for those services. So we have looked at, over the course of this spring and summer, how to effectively reduce our expenditures with our staffing levels, and we've been able to, at this point, all through attrition, we were very clear on that, all through attrition, showcase a savings to our district of approximately $515,000, which has been a positive for us as we look to offset this deficit moving forward. So, thank you, Diane.
And then in letter C, we have salary schedule placement effective August 14th. These are staff members who have been, throughout the past months, continuing their education, taking college-level classes, preparing for the possibility of remote learning. And so you see Lindsay Slagle, Casey Ledger, and Trina Fryman all moving to the Masters Plus 20 level, and Todd Grosjean will be placed at the Bachelor's 10 years experience level. Approving mentor teachers for the 2021 school year. The mentor teachers are listed. That is a requirement for mentor teachers to be hired to help service and help lead our younger staff members that have just come on. Approval of educational aids as per the exhibit. And again, this is another area that I would like to echo what Mark said. We've had some resignations, and each time Mark has worked with administrative and teaching staff to analyze the positions and see what we can do to help save some of those costs. We were able to reduce some educational aids. I believe, Kevin, do you recall 2 full-time?
2 full-time,
And
yeah.
2 part-time
I believe that's correct.
positions that were reduced as a result of that. In letter F, contract staff, Marissa Lupo as concessions in our indoor concessions. Approval of certified and classified substitutes for our 2020-21 school year as Exhibit I. Supplemental contract, this is to fill a position that you're going to see in letter I of junior high football coach for Chris Spizak, I believe that's correct. And then our resignations. Again, for various reasons, we have had a number of staff members resign over the past month, including Justin Garza, Dana Anderson, Cherie Terrell, Velvet Faze, and Faith Belts. And we wish them all the best in their next venture and where they're headed. And finally, approval of band volunteer for the 2020-21 school year, Frank DeBroja.
And then
Questions?
and I would draw the board's attention that my wife, Candy Schaefer, is one of the educational aides. She is currently employed by the school and is moving to a very similar position to the one she held at the end of last school year, but it would draw up to your attention.
Thank you, Beth. Are there any questions?
All right, hearing none, I would take a motion to accept these personnel recommendations. Thank you, Beth.
Second.
Scott and I. Any other questions or discussion? Kevin, roll please.
Ben?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Dustin?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda, looks like we're moving to Assistant Superintendent Recommendations. Mark.
Yeah, so I'm just seeking the approval for a continued partnership with the Health Partners of Western Ohio. They provide a dental outreach program to schools in our local counties. And we have partnered with them in the past, and they are just seeking a continued agreement between us and them that allows them and their staff to work closely with our school nurse department to provide dental services to students and checkups, and they use our facilities for that process. So it's a really nice program. We're able to reach out and work with many of our students. So a continued partnership there and approval of that agreement. And then we are also required by the Ohio Department of Education to have an approved resolution for remote learning. And in a nutshell, what this is simply language that states that should we have to close down school, or should we have to move in the direction of not educating our students in a face-to-face manner, that we have the flexibility that allows us to educate our students in remote fashion. This is not new to Bryan schools, as we put this into place this past spring. This is an annual approval for this process, and within the guidelines that they promote for remote learning, we have our staff and our administration follow those guidelines to ensure that our students have equal access to learning materials and are able to keep up on that for the duration of the closure, however long it may be.
Thank you.
We do need a motion to accept those
Okay,
recommendations.
I wondered, I thought we would accept a motion.
I make a motion to accept the recommendations.
Thanks. Thanks, Scott. Thank you, Mike.
Deb?
Yes.
Dustin?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Thank you.
And the next item on the agenda would be points of information.
So I would say that in Kevin's financial spotlight tonight, he gave a great overview of our current, everything we know as of today in terms of finance, and Mark as well, is everything as we know of today in terms of our response to the current COVID crisis. But again, just a reassurance to the board that all of us, including our administrators and families and students, are paying a watchful eye to what's happening in our community and around our country. And we continue to take calls, we continue to answer questions via social media and email, but just have a little bit of patience, because everything, number one, because everything changes so rapidly, and number two, just because we're trying to make sure that we've thought through our plans before we make them public. So the next thing that is coming out, as Mark talked about, is our information to parents on the 2 paths that they can choose. And if they have questions, please reach out, but please really have that conversation with your family about what is best for your student. And our next board meeting is scheduled for August 17th, and believe it or not, that will be, like, we need to be ready to roll, because students come just 2 days later on August 19th. So right now we have that set at the field house board room, but we will, as we've been doing since March, we will kind of play that as it goes and see where we are. So I don't know if Mark or Kevin, you have anything else to share?
I would stand corrected, did we not designate another work night at the end of July? We discussed that.
Yes, you did.
July 27th.
Yes, unless there's been a change. Is that?
Yes, you did. So let's make sure we announce that, and that we make sure we have the notifications out for that.
5 p.m. is what I had.
I think
Yes.
that's what we just had already determined would work. So, thank you. I appreciate that addition. All right. Anything else? All right, very good. There will be no executive session need tonight, so I would take a motion to adjourn this evening's meeting.
Make a
this evening's meeting.
Thank you, Dustin.
Second.
Thank you, Scott.
Dustin?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.